that's a nice countdown.
Hello, everybody. Again, my name is Leah Den Hartogh. I am the editor of Plumbing and HVAC magazine. Today, I will be moderating our panel discussion on the Canadian landscape of heat pumps. I have a slew of experts on our panel today. I am going to get each of them to introduce themselves, and I will ask also that each individual person to answer the question, what is the relationship between heat pumps in your role in the industry? If you need me to answer, reread this question again at any point, just let me know. All right, Kevin, we're going to start with you.
All right, so I currently work for King Home Canada as a manager for technical support. Before that, I briefly worked with Daikin, and I worked for about 3 years with Mitsubishi as technical support. I also was as basically your service guy. I was the guy who showed up and fixed your heat pump for you for a very long time as well. So I have experience on the tools in real life and also behind the scenes with manufacturing. Heat pumps is something that I deal with every single day. I give a lot of training courses to guys who need it. How does a heat pump function, and how can we make it better to make sure that everyone is satisfied?
Awesome. Thanks, Kevin. Todd, start with you.
Hi, my name's... Oh, I'm sorry. Did you say Tom or Todd?
Todd. I did say Todd. Sorry. I will enunciate a little bit better.
Excellent. My name's Todd Backus. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of TECA. We're a nonprofit trade association, and most people know us through our training. So I am a professional engineer. I used to do a lot of design on Part 3 and Part 9 buildings. But at the start of my career, I actually was a sheet metal worker. So I have a red seal in sheet metal. So my relationship with heat pumps goes a long way back, from installing to designing, and now providing a lot of training around heat pumps.
Wonderful. Thanks, Todd. Tom, let's go to you now.
Tom Breen. I am Business Development Manager for Metalworks HVAC Superstores based here in Ontario. I'm about 35 years in the industry now. Most of my resume is wholesale, distribution, and a bit of manufacturing. My relationship with heat pumps in the present landscape is we don't manufacture heat pumps and we don't install them. We play that middle part where we connect the manufacturers with the installing contractors and provide support for the sale and years after.
Thanks, Tom. Perry?
Hi, my name's Perry Chao. I'm Regulatory Affairs Director at HRAI. So as an organization, we're the industry association that represents manufacturers and wholesalers or distributors, and also contractors, but also other organizations and individuals who are associated with the industry. And me, in my role as Director of Regulatory Affairs, my job is to listen to our members and then learn from them and communicate with regulators and make sure that the rules around heat pumps and other equipment in the industry make sense.
Wonderful. Thanks, Perry. And then last but not least, Bo, let's hear from you.
Everybody, my name is Bo DeAngelo. I am the North American Manager of Technical Services for Anisi gas absorption heat pumps. And in my role, I support the integration and training, as well as technical design for our gas heat pump systems that we produce in North America. And I've been in the trades for more than 35 years and heavily involved with heat pumps, particularly in hydronic applications, but also HVAC applications in commercial and residential. And so that is how I integrate with the heat pump systems that we utilize and install in Canada.
Wonderful. Thank you, everybody. All right. So for today's conversation, we really try to get, as you could see, a nice smorgasbord element of every side of the industry to try to give you guys the best exploration of how heat pumps in Canada has evolved and changed and will grow continuously as we move forward into the future. So I wanted to talk. I have a list of questions today. For anybody in the audience listening in, we do have our chat function on the right-hand side. So I encourage each and every single one of you guys to ask us some questions, and let's try and stump the expert today. I always want to try to challenge that. With our listing of experts and our good range of experts, I predict that'll be a hard one today because we have so many different elements. But I'd like to see if we can try at least. So I'm going to start out with our first question. So we in our pre-conversation we did identify that heat pumps are not necessarily ramping up in adoption as fast as we want to. So what would you say are some of the main contributing factors behind the slow heat pump adoption within Canada? So whoever feels comfortable taking a stab at that, please feel free to do so.
I'll jump in first, and then I know my colleagues here will elaborate. I think it's three things, and it's training. We're finding a real slow translation of the information from the manufacturer level, engineering level, down to the homeowner at the kitchen table or the building owner. And that has to pass through distributor, wholesale, through the contractor, and it's being done, but I think it's moving a bit slower than we all hoped that it would.
100%. I would also argue that a lot of the government subsidies that are put in place are also kind of hurting the adoption as well, because they're promoting a lot of people to install the wrong equipment for the wrong houses. Because you're just going for that max value. You want to see that big number, or actually the smallest number you can on your receipt. So a lot of guys are just slamming in basically what the client wants and what not what the client needs.
I think the adoption is also regional. So I'm out in BC, and I noticed like we have some advantages in BC for heat pump adoption. Like our climate is very mild where the bulk of the population is. And there were some early adopters. So I live on Vancouver Island, and we actually didn't have great access to gas. So as a result, we actually ended up with a lot of heat pumps very early, relative to other parts of Canada. And we have had a very successful rebate program that's gone through, but definitely had a lot of challenges on the training and also on the regulation side.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful if everybody was moving at the same speed from the various levels of government to the manufacturers to the everybody else that helps get it to the street, but that doesn't seem to be the case. Seems like everybody's moving at different speeds.
One of the interesting changes that's happened in the BC Building Code as of 2024 is we now have a requirement for cooling in at least one room. And I think that clearly is going to drive heat pump adoption because it's challenging to just cool one room. It's still possible, you can do it with like a mini split system or something like that. But the reality for us at least is most homes have a centrally ducted system. So it just makes sense for them to install a heat pump. And, maybe we still have a dual fuel system where we'll have a gas furnace. But again, our climate's so mild, we can actually get away in some situations with just a heat pump and it's fine.
And
Can I ask you a follow-up question, Todd?
Certainly.
Am I allowed to ask questions?
Absolutely, you may.
So with this new change in the code, do you anticipate that, does that affect retrofit or is that just new construction? I guess is my first question.
That is,
and the second part of that is,
just
do you anticipate that's going to drive energy consumption up in your province?
Yeah, just new construction.
Okay, not as much.
I think it will increase energy consumption. However, BC Hydro was our primary electrical utilities agency, does have a lot of rebates around trying to retrofit older dwellings as well. And one of the latest things that have come out have been around multi-unit residential buildings, or MERBs. They're trying to get the old baseboard heaters out and replace them with heat pumps.
And are those electric or hot water baseboards?
Yes,
Electric,
a lot of them are electric. We do have some hydronic ones, But yeah, electric is just so popular out here for that stuff. I mean, it's such a simple design, right?
Well, coming from Quebec, like we've been electric for a really long time. So heat pumps has been like kind of just the meat and butter, bread and potato for a long time. And blending and blending stuff. Let's go. And I know that in newer condos, we're actually forced to interlock our heat pumps with those baseboard heaters. So we have to like have a separate control on the wall that controls both at the same time. So we are implementing a lot more heat pumps into newer residences, but as far as retrofit goes, getting the gas and oil out of there is really difficult because the people who know that heat love that heat. And that's, I think, where it gets difficult.
Yeah, it's a great point. I think a big part of the challenge for the contractors that are speaking with the building owners or with homeowners that are not as educated on the equipment as obviously people in our industry are, is moving them away from what they consider to be their comfort zone. Maybe every home they've ever owned was heated with gas. Maybe they're rural and every home they've ever owned has been heated with oil. It is hard to change people's ingrained habits. Showing them a bunch of technical information at the kitchen table isn't always the way to do that. Rebates always help, but there is also an onus to make the rebates easy to understand. And I'm not sure that the government achieved that this last round either. So,
I guess to echo what you said earlier, Tom, about how education is important for contractors, this is kind of an example where obviously consumers need to be educated as well. They know what they're familiar with, and it's going to take some effort on the part of all the players, governments, utilities, to get them to move outside of what they already know.
Do you think the onus?
Oops, sorry. Go ahead,
Go
Leah,
ahead, Bob.
please.
I was just going to follow up with Perry's comment there. I was going to ask if do you think the onus on educating the consumer, the homeowner, is on the contractor?
I think ultimately that's where it always lands because they're the ones that are in contact with the customer, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I was going to. Yeah, I was going to echo Tom just because he kind of alluded to it, and then Perry kind of put it right out in the light there that the consumer does need to be educated, and that's really that really is the contractor's job, and so that requires a different set of training skills and a different set of application skills for the contractor. And I think one of the big obstacles that we see, I think this is just all over North America, is the consumer is confused between return on investment and payback. So they want to know how long they're going to, they're going to spend $20,000 on a system. They want to know when they're going to get their 20 grand back, and they're not. And contractors have to get really comfortable with explaining that and where that real return on investment is coming. And unfortunately, there's a stark difference between the two. And most contractors, from my experience, are loath to actually, wade into that pool with the customer. And that leaves a lot of opportunity on the table because the customer really wants to have a better system. And they're at that point where they're making that decision anyway. So they have to really understand what the true benefit is.
Yeah, that was actually going to be kind of similar to what I was going to ask as a follow-up question, which was a lot of times contractors, they go in to be tradespeople. They don't go into understanding the full aspect and avenue that goes into wholly running a business. And so somebody who just wants to install HVAC equipment and heat pumps or whatever ends up having to wear so many different hats. And it's hard, I'm sure, for the contractor to understand and properly educate themselves on best approaches for things like how to sell heat pumps to the customer and how to have those conversations. So I do have a couple of follow-ups based off of everything has been said so far, but I did want to touch base on Andrew's comment in the chat because I thought it might spark an interesting debate. So Andrew's comment was, you were also forgetting the major costs quoted and the misrepresentation from contractors. Does anybody have anything that they want to comment on that?
Well, I'd like to take just a stab at that. On a parallel is that I think probably Tom would know this, and I'm sure Perry does too, just being involved with HRAI and seeing the volume of heat pumps that are just now being sold versus conventional systems. It's ticking up tremendously. There's more work than you have contractors to do. And so it is very easy for contractors and unfortunately distributors and manufacturers just to sell boxes of equipment rather than sell value and some sort of end result beyond just a better heating system. And that's a challenge. I'm not sure how we overcome that, but your better contractors, I think, will be able to differentiate themselves in that setting and kind of explain the value of what they're doing and pick and choose those jobs where they're going to be doing the better systems, and really it's going to benefit the customer, because it really is a challenge. Because it's very easy for contractors to just say, yep, sure, we'll give you a new heat pump, and this is the size you need. It fits into this box. It's 50 yards from your house, and it fits in between my fingers, and so that's the one you need. And and unfortunately, we need to move away from that.
Yeah.
So coming from a more of manufacturing background too, and being the guy who's installed it, what I think happens a lot is the sales guys don't get the training that they need as well. So you come in as a manufacturer and you say, I have this unit, we can do this, 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 and this within these limitations. But all they heard was, you can do that. So then they go out and they just start selling what you told them, but they miss that last note where it's like, there's limitations here. I can go within this range, basically. So we come back to the original point at hand, that I think the adoption comes from training, right? It's not just techs, it's also sales guys, it's everybody. So as manufacturing, what we're trying to work on for sure is making everybody just slightly more aware of all the reality of the unit and what's going to happen for real.
And to address Andrew's question about the costs, I mean, we mentioned training as kind of the keystone in what's keeping the keeping the momentum maybe from being where it should be. Cost is definitely a factor in that, but as everybody here has touched on, the more educated everybody in the food chain is to get that message down to the person that has to sign that check, because it is going to be a bit of a bigger investment. The more educated we are to tell people how to sell the value, return on investment, all of that, it really helps that whole process flow. And I think to a large part that's still missing. Whenever the government comes out with any level of rebates, that becomes the easiest conversation to have with the homeowner. I'm never mind what it's going to cost you. Here's what I can get you back. And that ends up being the whole conversation. And I just think that's approaching it from the wrong end of the telescope, but it ultimately creates a gold rush where contractors and distributors, it needs to be said, get dollar signs in their eyes and say, to Beau's point, now we can move boxes because there's a rebate to help us move boxes. To have a satisfied building owner or homeowner at the end of the day, it all starts with design. It has to be designed properly, and then it has to be installed properly. It's a long way to go from just quoting somebody, $500 off.
One of the challenges Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, sure thing. I'll just sort of jump in really quickly, but I'll just mention that at HRAI, we spend a lot of time talking to governments about the design of rebate programs, and I feel like the conversation here has touched on two key ones. One is ensuring that the technicians have both like competence and certification, making sure that the process is designed to reward that or encourage that, but also in supporting choice and competition, and making sure that there is broad access for contractors to make sure that the consumer has choice, and that they are receiving advice and guidance from contractors who are like a wide range of contractors who have different knowledge and skill. We've got other points that come up often when we talk about design. I'll probably touch on them later on in the discussion, but I would say those two points, making sure that the rebate, the design of the rebate encourages or ensures that technicians have the competence certification, but also that consumers have many different voices to hear from when they're making their decisions. Those would help in this situation.
Some of the challenges that we faced out here definitely revolve around a lack of accountability from some contractors. And I certainly saw this going back to my contracting days. I'd put bids in for jobs, and people would counter, I'd see other bids or speak to the client after, and they're coming in below the cost of my materials, which is just insane to me. But we still see this where it's not apples to apples between companies. And we've had very loose regulation, certainly where I am, around checking for trade qualifications, even clarity on what exactly those trade qualifications have to be. And then, the inspectors, we really need to support them and have like a better structure for their review, because I'm still seeing inspectors not collecting what I consider critical design documentation, like even heat loss, heat gain calculations. They aren't collecting it, they aren't reviewing it. So TECA has been really involved, especially in BC, but trying to extend that more nationally now too, to support a better structure so that it's fair and it's accurate. We're all bidding on the same job because we're all doing that same critical design work. Like it just blows my mind that there's still people going out there doing the picture frame sizing method and just installing whatever and having really no repercussions unless the homeowner can build a robust court case.
And to follow up on that thought, I think that's totally true, especially residentially. Like on residential, trunk slammers are totally still a thing. We've tried to put certificates, red seals, gas tags, all sorts of things in place, but unfortunately, your guy from Home Depot who's like, "Yeah, I can totally do that," he's still coming in. And I think we got the same reputation sometimes as the guy who's fixing your car, where you're like, I don't know if I should trust this guy, but it's real cheap, so let's go.
We have had heat loss, heat gain calculations tied into the rebates as a requirement, and that has been helpful. The only problem is, are the people who are accepting the rebate applications, are they trained to understand, like, hey,
do
this
they even know what they're looking at?
right? Is this
Yeah.
fishy? Because somebody who really looks at design all day, they're gonna see like, hey, hold on, this square footage in this climate zone, like something's not right here. But if you had administrative people who are just ticking a box, that's just not sufficient. And I am concerned also on the inspector side, because I speak to a lot of inspectors, and they are often very forthcoming that HVAC is not their strongest suit in most cases.
So I have a question to follow up on that comment, Todd. For inspectors in the building, as I'm not an expert in this area of our industry, are they blanket inspectors, or do you have inspectors that are geared towards specific types of trades? So would there be a master electrician inspector that only inspects electrical work, or is it broad based?
It definitely depends on the kind of building you're looking at.
Okay. Okay.
So TECA mostly deals in the Part 9 world, and you will have different inspectors at different stages with different levels of competencies, but they do, like Part 9, there's a limited resources issue here, especially in some of the smaller areas. Like I'm thinking some of the island communities, they're struggling to get an inspector to every job. So forget about getting, a guy who's like specifically an HVAC expert. Like they don't have the resources for it. Now, when you get into the commercial world, it's way more robust, because not only do you have several inspectors, various stages of inspection, you also have the professionals, right? You have engineers and architects, and generally what I consider to be a much higher standard of trade. And you have those contracts, like if I'm the engineer on a project, I'm going to retain a holdback to make sure that the deficiencies are met. But in the Part 9 world, where the contract might not even be written down, it might just be a handshake between the homeowner and the trades, that homeowner might not have any familiarity with contract and contract law, and who knows what the outcome is going to be there.
Okay, thanks, Todd. I'm going to go to the next question that we have on my listing here, but I do want to connect it to Justin's comment in the chat. So bear with me. So the question I had was, why are heat pumps a viable option for heating and cooling buildings and homes in Canada? But I want us to put that from a lens of what Justin's question is. So think of it from do you have any suggestions for our sales teams on how to make more heat pump sales? What benefits should we be presenting to the homeowners and building owners? So who wants to take a stab at that to start?
The question, I would say if I'm taking a stab at the question, I would stop focusing on benefits and features and really identify what the customer's needs are. Are their bills too high? Do they have poor comfort in the home? Do they have a combination of the two? Are there areas of the home that are not heated properly? Is it noisy? What are the real pain points that the customer has? And then solve those problems. And then the benefits are just icing on the cake. So when the customer is asking questions, then you can say, yes, the system features this, or it does this. But we have to get away from features and benefits selling. It's not the unique selling proposition. It's the unique proposition or problem that you solve. So we have to also change the mindset of sales as well. And so really kind of have to think outside the box of really, what is it that customer is actually buying? Are they just buying a new heating system? Are they buying comfort? Are they buying value? Are they buying a high quality installation? Do they have a bad experience with the previous contractor? That's what we're selling. And so we have to remember what it is we really sell. The equipment is just ancillary.
So would you say then that the best approach isn't going into the conversation as a sales associate within an HVAC company, going in and saying, okay, I want the equal to be heat pump, and then finding everything in between, and then it might be a different type of system? Is the best idea just purely just to listen and then be open to the type of system that might work for that building or home?
Yeah, absolutely. Because it may not be a heat pump. I mean, obviously that's one of the many solutions you have, and it's a very good solution. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But that solution doesn't necessarily, one size does not fit all. And so you really have to look at what the problem is we're trying to solve with the customer. Be that, it doesn't matter whether that's a residential customer, commercial customer, or a customer with a restaurant or a hotel, multifamily, all those applications. We have to understand what that problem is. And then remember that we have a whole host of tools and equipment and services and value-added services in our arsenal as contractors that we can bring to the table. And it's when you apply all of those, that's where the customer can't possibly arrive at any other conclusion other than to hire you because you're the expert for the job.
And completely agree with both points. When you get caught up in a gold rush, which is what the rebates sometimes create, obviously everybody on this call, probably everybody on the panel that's listening in, we're all very aware of the decarbonization mindset, and there's some specific targets being set by the government and everything else. So it's all for the right reasons. But if you start your conversation as Bo alluded to, where come hell or high water, I'm selling this customer a heat pump because decarbonization is what I should be doing, you're definitely circumventing the true sales process. We always say that prescription without diagnosis is malpractice. So if you go in and you tell a person what they need before you've even asked them what problem we're trying to solve, you're almost guaranteeing you're going to end up at the wrong answer. You cannot prescribe something without diagnosing the problem first. It just leads to malpractice. And I think that happens every day in our industry. I think that happens every day in every industry, where the person who's sitting on the inventory feels the onus to move that inventory, and they will make the project fit that inventory if they can. We definitely need to move away from that and be better salespeople.
I mean, to connect to a lot of the conversations alluding to rebates, I know there's been some frustrating in government subsidies. I mean, the best example I can think of from what I've heard from talking to people is the Greener Homes Grant Program. Yep. There was so many heat pumps that were installed basically as a glorified air conditioner.
As an overpriced air conditioner.
Yeah, exactly. And to connect back to Andrew's comment prior to the misrepresentation of the technology.
But they got $1,200 back, so everybody's happy. Until they're not.
I mean, money does make the world go round. Anybody else have any comments they want to make on advice for salespeople on selling heat pumps?
One
think to
question
follow
that
up with
I have
Tom.
that I always do is I look at my client and I speak to them directly, and I try and figure out where on the slider between price is the main driver and thermal comfort is the main driver, and figure out where they land on that scale. Because out here, and I assume you guys have the same situation. There are some people, especially when it comes to homes, they don't care what the cost is. You could hand them $1 million bill and they'd be like, yeah, sure, whatever. I just never want to think about this again. I want to have complete control in every single room, and thermal comfort is my top priority. And then there's, on the other side of the spectrum, the person's who's going to say, how much is this going to cost me? And clients fall somewhere in that range. So identifying what kind of client you have and where their priorities are, I think is a really critical first step around system design. Because I'm not going to try and sell a Cadillac to somebody who's looking for a Civic.
And I think part of that too, where the mindset, if we get better at this over everything that like Bo, Tom, and Todd have said, is as a contractor, you're gonna save a lot more money if you have a lot less callbacks.
hmm
And if you didn't install the proper equipment because you wanted to sell your inventory, well, that's what you got, let's go. You're gonna get a lot of callbacks and you're gonna get a lot of frustrated customers and technicians. And
Yeah.
it's gonna cost you more than you make, really.
The life cycle of the sales call goes way beyond finishing the installation. And that's what salespeople need to understand, is that if you're getting callbacks on that job for 2 years after the installation, you didn't make any money. You think
That's
you did,
it.
but you didn't make any money.
I
You've
think
been better off not taking the job in the first place.
100%.
I think
Yeah.
that also for the business owners out there is something to think about. How do you structure your sales incentives, right? Because if I set up a system where I reward what I call the rip and run, you show up, you make the sale, you run. If I'm paying my salespeople based on that approach, don't be surprised when that's exactly what you get.
Totally agree.
So I know that, like, as far as manufacturing goes, that's why they've started taking such aggressive a stance on dealers and authorized dealers and distributors and all that, is to try and limit that approach. They're like, even the people who have become dealers and they signed on a sales guy who installed, shoot, I don't know, like 30 faulty systems, you might get dropped as a dealer. Because it's like, look, you are becoming a problem to the industry, so we can't have this.
Any other comments, gentlemen? No? Okay. I'm going to jump to our next question. So I wanted to look a little bit forward, and I wanted to see where you guys thought the heat pump sector will be moving forward.
I think the biggest changes are coming in the air to water heat pump sector.
Okay.
We're definitely seeing some push towards certain areas where they're trying to get away from gas boilers and they're trying to move towards air to water heat pumps. Now, this is definitely a climate zone situation, right? Because that is not feasible everywhere. But in some of the milder locations, maybe you have some backup heat in there too. It's possible, especially new construction with these more modern homes. Like the loads are just way down on both heating and cooling. So it's starting to become more feasible, and the technology is getting better because we all know the issues about high leaving water temperature with air to water heat pumps, right? Impacts your efficiency, might not even have the capacity to actually deliver it. But I think that is really interesting technology that's starting to really improve.
And it might be kind of I'm not sure if this is a chicken or egg situation, but you'll see that jurisdictions that are really successful in increasing their adoption of heat pumps, they've got a mix. They've got a solid mix of different types of heat pumps, and that might be a sign that government should be following that or enabling that.
Well, I think they should be enabling that in that they should be allowing a diversified approach to building loads, be they residential, commercial, whatever they are. What I've seen is some jurisdictions, not necessarily in Canada, but I know it happens where they've just put their foot down and said, we'll have no natural gas, we'll have no fossil fuels or whatever. And that may not be the best approach to the solution, particularly when we didn't get to commercial. Residential, we could probably get away with it. It may impact the customer with higher cost of heating, depending on where they are and what their electric rates are, but it'll drastically impact a commercial customer. And so, they really have to take a broad approach to how they determine what efficiency measures they're going to implement if a permit is pulled and we're going to retrofit a system or build a new building, and how we're going to approach that. In a lot of cases, you could put the best heat pump system in someone's home, and if they haven't broken out a tube of caulking or a can of spray foam, you're probably wasting a lot of money, and you're not really going to see the benefit. So you really have to take a very blanket approach. And we've run into this as a manufacturer and having to work with various jurisdictions where they're just dug in, and this is the only thing they're going to accept. And unfortunately, the dramatic effect is on the capital expenditure for the building owner, as well as their operating expense. So it's good that is happening, and I hope it continues to happen that way. So if there are any administrative authority officials on the call today, please pay attention to that, because you can't there's no one size fits all approach.
I think when we talk about the future of the heat pump landscape, I think from a technology point of view, the sky is almost the limit, because what the general contracting community is immersed in right now with heat pumps is still a pretty basic system. And I think there's still a lot of places to go. I mean, I know the Bose company sells gas absorption heat pumps, which are kind of a step ahead in technology. I think there's a lot on the water side to be explored, which Canada hasn't done a great job with. It's maybe more of a southern states kind of mindset right now. So I think there's a lot of places for it to go, but I think, without being too cynical, I think the landscape has to settle a bit before we're going to get to that place where we can absorb technology. Because even with a basic box, platforms are a bit of a moving target right now, and I'm being generous when I say a bit of a moving target. We've got refrigeration platform changes, efficiency changes, a whole push for decarbonization that's on a ticking time clock, and it creates a lot of noise and a bit of anxiety in the selling process. And I think before we can get the general contracting community to open their hearts to, I'm ready to talk about this next level of technology, I think we just need to kind of level set a bit first and get everybody really comfortable, and then start stepping forward with more technology. I mean, it's not going to happen overnight. It's not a light switch. It's a marathon. It is not a sprint.
Yeah, and then we got to train all those people too, Tom.
Yeah. How did we start this? Training. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, I was like, just the introduction of like inverter technology. A lot of guys were like, I don't want it.
Yeah, doesn't matter if you don't want it.
Yeah, it's like it's here, man. You better know it. But
I don't, as a wholesaler, I don't want to go through another refrigeration change. But I don't really have a choice. We're going to be going through another one in a couple of years. So it's that just always creates a little bit of an unsteady footing for people that are trying to get their heads around, what am I selling today? So I mean, technologically, I think, Bo, you're on the manufacturing side, you're immersed in it. I think you would agree there's a lot of places for us to go with technology, with heat pumps. Mm-hmm. But I think it's going to be a long time to get there until we just kind of settle down a bit.
Yeah. You got to have a building to apply it to, or an application to apply it to. You have to really work to find those applications. The technology is there, but nothing is one size fits all. I wish it was.
And then
I'll have a lot of.
Sorry, go ahead. I was just going to throw in AI, because I feel like every time we're talking about technology, somebody has to mention AI. I don't have anything to add. I was just going to say AI. I feel like it needs to be said.
It's already there, man.
Yeah,
it's literally already in there. I know that like some of the boards coming out right now have a basically calculators ingrained in them to say, okay, if I go at this output for this long, my demand was met within 20 minutes. So let's push it. Like there's already AI in there, man. It's the manufacturers and basically the guys who are making it in China or Korea or wherever in the world they are. They've been sneaking in stuff without us knowing for a really long time, and we're slowly adapting to it without even knowing because it's just been forced on us. But when they decide to make a giant push, like I think you guys said, I think they're ready to swing a lot harder than we're ready for.
I would tend to agree.
Just as long as I don't need a monthly subscription to my thermostat.
It's coming. It's coming.
Well, it's actually listening to you already, so.
Yeah.
Well,
It
not
is,
mine. Mine's mine's pretty dumb, actually.
There's a mercury
I was
bulb in
offended
it.
by that comment.
I wanted to touch base a little bit on cold climate heat pumps. And I'm I'm also kind of curious when going in on this discussion about when they're the right install, and how do you determine the best style of heat pump and type of heat pump and how low that they should operate down to? Is it as simple as the climate zone that the heat pump will be installed in? Can we touch a little bit on that?
So before the real tech guys take it over here, because there's a lot to talk about on cold climate heat pumps, I'll revisit something that Bo referred to earlier. The rules of thumb are out the window. It's even within a climate zone, it's really hard to come up with a sustainable rule of thumb where a guy could keep it written as a scrap of paper in his wallet. That's his go-to. Even within a climate zone, if you never sell a heat pump outside of the climate zone that you live in, there's still so many applications and so many nuances to the building that will change what that design needs to be. So cold climate heat pumps, the technology again is there. The connector is not there. There's a lack of understanding of what cold climate heat pumps are capable of and where to apply them. Now I'll let the tech guys talk.
So I push for the balance point calculation because I 100% agree with Tom. There is no like cheat sheet you're going to flip open and get the right answer instantly. Because the first question is, what are you concerned about? So usually the balance point that I select is based off the capacity of the heat pump and the changing load of the dwelling, right? Because as you get colder, when you're trying to heat with a heat pump, you need more heat, but your capacity falls off from your heat pump, right? So it's a negative cycle. But maybe that's not what you're worried about. Maybe you're worried about what is the cheapest I can run this, in which case you are trying to select the economic balance point. So that's the first question is, what balance point are you actually interested in? And then, you really have to go like a heat loss, heat gain calculation, plot it on a graph, look at the performance of your specific unit in that dwelling, plot that where the two lines cross. That is your balance point temperature. That is your switchover temperature. And if you get colder than that, what's going to happen is your indoor set point temperature is going to fall because you won't be able to keep up. So that's the ideal solution. And I know there are tools in development like Enercan's working on a website tool. There are other people who are working on it to make it easier. But there is just no quick and dirty, -5.
I know a lot of the newer thermostats you actually have you input energy, like how much are you paying per kilowatt hour, how much are you paying for your gas, and what kind of machine do you have outside, and then it'll run an algorithm to try and balance that out itself. But like you said, it's as far as like a just everyday technician, you probably just don't know that number.
Yeah, one of the big challenges that we run into, because when it comes to cold climate, we don't use a backup system, so we're a little different. So we don't have some of those problems. We still have we're still a heat pump, so we're going to lose capacity, but our capacity loss is significantly lower than an electric heat pump of any type. So that's a benefit, but at the same time, we really have to look at what that load is. And what I often see, and having done literally thousands of heating designs in my career, the actual load that you calculate, if you just do a simple load on a building, be it a zone load or a block load, is grossly off of what the actual load is. Usually we end up oversizing anyway. And that's been historically documented just by looking at fuel consumption and, of course, weather changes. And you will have extreme circumstances where you have extremely cold weather and you have these spikes in temperature drops. But overall, we're already up against it because we're going to be very conservative in our load calculation to start with. So that's the first challenge. So we have to have some way to offset that with either modulation or staging, inverter technology. There's a bunch of different strategies in the equipment to apply there, but it's almost a guess because you see what the load is on your calculation. You're looking at it and saying, okay, this building needs, X. And really what it's using is, 30% less than X or 20% less than X. And so now we're already up against it. So we probably have the capacity. So really just understanding what is our capacity at those design conditions, what's that worst case scenario, and then a little bit of realism to it too. If you're going to achieve those bitter cold temperatures, it's probably happening at night. You're obviously going to have it during the day too, but it's going to be less frequent than it will be at night. So are your occupants more tolerable of a lower set point temperature at night? Are they putting the systems into setback? So it is a moving target and it is challenging. And I'm hoping that over time we'll have more software that'll allow you to take a year's worth of utility data and the load and compare those actual usage hour by hour. The weather data is readily available. It's not like we can't pull weather data from pretty much any historical site, in all over, just about anywhere in the world, So, gosh, there's crowdsourced weather stations all over the planet. So we should be able to do this, and we don't yet. So there's an opportunity for our industry to evolve with really right-sizing equipment and making sure it applies to what the actual load is.
I'm just going to jump in quickly on that one. I'll let somebody else, if they want to add on to this at all, they can do so. But Katie Harper made a comment in the chat saying, in case people haven't seen it, Thermal Point is one of these tools Todd mentioned. And then there is a link to this tool, and it says the note to it is it uses historical data to avoid oversizing. So just wanted to make sure that was brought to everyone's attention. Otherwise, was there any other comments from our panelists that they wanted to add to?
I was gonna say the other real big tricky thing with the very low ambient or your ultra heat units is humidity, because we tend to do a lot of those calculations and loads without really factoring in like the outdoor humidity. So unfortunately, we're like where we are in like Quebec. There are places where when it gets down to minus 30, it's still 80% humidity. So that tends to freeze up your coil a lot more, which will hurt your exchange a lot. So you have to try and think about all these things as a contractor, which, again, that's what kind of makes it difficult. And that's why we need to train everybody on, okay, what's the reality of the situation here?
All right, just also another note, Todd's been adding some other additional resources for anybody that's on this chat as well. These are the NRCan tools. They aren't perfect, but they are under continued development. So just some resources for everybody that's listening in. Was there any other comments from our panelists?
We
no?
can talk
Okay.
about cold climate heat pumps all day if you let us.
I believe it. I remember. Yeah, I believe it. Andrew also made a comment in our chat as well. I wanted to loop back to it. He makes a comment. He says, one component that needs attention is the wholesalers having enough supply of replacement parts. It is a problem. Does anybody feel comfortable making a comment back towards that?
I'll jump in.
I figured it would be you, Tom.
I am a distributor. Yeah, that is always a challenge whenever any kind of a platform change comes about or a new technology emerges. Everybody starts selling this box or that box. The onus is on the supply chain to make sure that it's healthy all the way through. I can tell you that since COVID, and I hate to bring up COVID, but I have to, because since COVID, the supply chain has been broken. And I know it's been 5 years, but it's really, in some ways and in some segments, it's still not repaired yet. That's not an excuse. It's just a fact. As a distributor, from our point of view, if we take on a line of furnaces, boilers, air conditioners, doesn't matter what it is, hot water tanks, we feel a very strong obligation to keep a robust supply of parts on hand. That again is a moving target because parts are one of those things that it is really hard to know what you're going to need, especially if it's a new platform, because there's no history on the street of what's going to fail more often. So you get a top 50 or a top 100 spare parts for this heat pump line. You really have to lean on some of the seasoned people within your organization to say, you know what, bring in some of these compressors, some of these boards. I don't think that particular widget, I've never replaced one of those in my career. Maybe we can zero on those. To start with, it's always a guessing game. I think across our industry, our wholesale professionals do a pretty good job at the guessing game, but guaranteed during your first cold snap, the part that they need is the one that you don't have every time. So that's how you learn. You build your own history. You say, we got caught in the last cold snap. I don't want to get caught again. We are, as the middleman, experiencing some supply chain issues from all of our manufacturers when it comes to parts. Since COVID, they have found themselves, maybe they were single sourced with a board manufacturer for literally decades before COVID. And COVID taught everybody not to be single sourced. So they've started to spread their business around. They're getting their chips from this guy and their boards from that guy now. That hasn't necessarily improved the supply chain. In some cases, it's made it a little harder to wrangle. So the point is 100% valid. To really get the confidence up at the building owner and the kitchen table sales level, parts have to be very robust in the supply chain. It's a challenge, but I would say the onus does roll down to the contractor as well. We get a lot of contractors during a heat wave calling us and saying, I need a capacitor. And the question is, why don't you have 10 capacitors on your truck? You know, summer happens every year here, and every year you're going to have to replace some capacitors. You should carry a few of the common size ones on your truck. A lot of guys are running lean. A lot of companies are running lean. It's a valid point. I think every time we have a platform change or a new technology introduction, it's a real learning curve for the first 2 years that you're selling that equipment to make sure that you've got your parts mix right. And I promise you that at the next supply or at the next platform change, you will be left with a lot of legacy parts that you will never sell. That is the reality of being a wholesaler and to some degree being a contractor as well.
Yeah, I would second what Tom said, that I personally feel that, and having been in wholesale and the manufacturing sector and been a contractor for many, many years, I think it's the responsibility of the contractor to have the necessary parts on his truck or in his shop for the equipment he sells and not rely on the wholesaler. And I think that's partly because the wholesaler is already your bank. Second of all, the equipment is something you sold, so it's your responsibility to maintain it and take care of it. And also it's part of being a good business person to stand behind the product that you sell. So there's a cost associated with that. And if you're not charging enough, you're not building your pricing enough, you really don't understand what your true cost of operation is, then you're selling yourself short, because now you won't be able to afford to have what could be a relatively low cost parts package for the types of equipment you're selling on the shelf. So when you have to utilize it, you do, and it's there. Not only that, you're killing your efficiency. So some of that does fall on the wholesaler. I know as a manufacturer, we determined early on, because you're a newer company, that we would provide our wholesale vendors with every part that they would need to replace. That was a very difficult decision to do at no cost, so that they have those service kits in place, our reps, not our wholesalers. So at least they're in their region, but still that represents a cost to us. But that's just a commitment to making sure that the contractors have what they need. But we have an expectation of our contractors to go service that equipment and learn how to service it and know what they need. And that has to continue. And so, as Tom said, a lot of training, we have a lot of changes to make in the industry. It's just, we'll always be busy. There's the good thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Job security.
That's the other thing that I found very difficult is a lot of the people coming into the industry now, because a lot of the more seasoned veterans of the industry are leaving, and they didn't have the opportunity to train somebody. So the people who are training them are people who weren't actually trained in the first place. So you're getting a lot of like, how do we troubleshoot this thing? I don't know. Let's call somebody, or I just don't even know how a multimeter works.
Or let's replace 5 parts and hope that
Yeah,
somewhere in there,
a lot of part changers out there.
hit and miss mechanical gets it done.
I think, Leah,
Yeah.
you just need a whole new platform, a whole new session just on how we get people trained and adopted into the trades, because we could spend all day on that.
Oh, I believe it.
It's literally my job. So hey.
That's
Okay, so I just want to give everyone a heads up. We have under 5 minutes left, and we have touched maybe on 4 of my questions, but that's not necessarily too big of a surprise. That's why I come in with more questions than needed. So with only a little bit left, I am going to pick which question I want us to wrap up the ending with. So I think the one I want is I'm going to do number 10 one, which was, what is something you wished every contractor in Canada knew about heat pumps?
It's possible.
It's possible.
It's possible to satisfy your customers' needs with a heat pump system if properly designed.
Okay.
Don't be afraid of it. And I would say, I say that's true 99% of the time. There will sometimes be an application where you just cannot make a heat pump fit, but I would say, generally speaking, the technology that we've been talking about here all day today, it makes everything possible if you start from the proper design mindset.
Any
To add to that, I think the thing I would want everyone to know is mostly on the customer end is just quit touching the thermostat, man. Just stop it. The less you touch it, the more it will adapt to what it needs to know, and the more comfortable you'll be. So if you set it to 22, leave it at 22.
Spoken like a true dad.
It's funny. I have a buddy who's just opening up a business, and I got to go behind the scenes on it. And when I was in there, I saw the thermostat, and my first comment when I saw it was, "Are you covering that? Because your guests, your customers will play around with that." Immediately, he's like, "Yes, we're gonna put a cover on it." And I was like, "Okay, you're good." Any other comments? What do you wish that you wish every contractor in Canada knew about heat pumps? No? Okay, I have more questions. Okay, which one do I want to ask? I mean, it's my dilemma is we only have 2 minutes, so I don't want to go into something that's going to go too in depth. So I say that, and then I'm going to ask this question. So I love the refrigeration side of things. I've found it very interesting with the A2L adoption and whatnot that's going on in Canada. How will you say that the refrigeration market is going to be affecting heat pumps moving forward?
It's a lot of changes coming.
For sure.
A lot of changes coming. Yeah, I think it's going to be, you have natural refrigerants, and then of course you have your 2Ls and other blends that are going to come into play, and then potentially, in the future here, propane, which is, a whole different animal. So I think there's going to be a lot of changes, and contractors need to, and just all of us, not just contractors, wholesalers, representatives, engineers, architects, industry adjuncts, all need to really understand the implications and get ready for to adapt. Yeah, change and adapt. Gas furnace hasn't changed a whole lot in 45 years, but the refrigerant scene has quite a bit.
For sure.
And I'm
any other comments?
Add that throughout the industry, we're going to be needing to inform and educate at every level of the supply chain to be prepared for the changes that are coming, that have already started, and that's something that will. It's not just going to end after a certain period of time. It's going to be continuous learning to make sure that at every level of the industry they're keeping up.
I like that. I might actually use that as our ending, just so that we start and end with the idea of training. So I will do my little wrap up now for everybody that's on this panel. I appreciate you so much. Today's discussion and conversation was fantastic. Thank you for everyone who stuck it out to the end of the day and kept on listening to our panel and asking questions. We appreciate each and every single one of you guys. We do have our next technical training day coming up this fall. It'll be on hydronics. So hopefully stay tuned for that, and we will send out some information about that when we know our date and whatnot. Otherwise, again, thank you for everyone who joined in on our sessions today, and we hope to see you guys next time. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a great day.
Have a good one, guys.